Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome back to Spiritual Midwife. This week we continue our journey through the Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. Last week we explored the first agreement, be impeccable with your word, the profound impact our words have on both ourselves and others. And if you haven't listened to that episode yet, I encourage you to go back and check it out, because today's agreement builds on that foundation. Welcome to Spiritual Midwife, the podcast that tenderly guides you through the transformative journey of spiritual awakening and personal development towards the ultimate destination of soul sovereignty. I'm Claire Attio, a medicine woman and dedicated guide to the profound realm of soul sovereignty, and you are listening to Spiritual Midwife. So today we're diving into the second agreement, don't take anything personally. This agreement in many ways it's liberating. It offers a pathway to emotional freedom and inner peace, something we all strive for in our lives. However, while the concept sounds simple, putting it into practice is a challenge. It's like all those things. The simpler the concept, the harder it is, the more challenging it can be. But once you truly embrace it, this agreement can and does transform your relationships and reduce unnecessary suffering, and gives you a deep, profound sense of peace. So what does it mean not to take anything personally? How can we start applying this in our everyday lives? That's what we're going to get into now. Don't take anything personally. At first, this might seem like an impossible task. After all, how can we not take things personally when they're directed at us, right? Whether it's a compliment, a criticism, a judgment, it can feel natural to assume that what others say and do is a reflection of who we are. But this is the key that Ruiz gives. He says, don't take anything personally. He's inviting us to understand that what others say, feel, and do is never really about us. It's about them. Every action, every word someone speaks is a reflection of their own beliefs, their own emotions, their own experiences. They are viewing the world through their own unique lens. And this is something we all do. Think about times when you've had an opinion about something. Where has that opinion come from? It's come from your own beliefs, your own emotions, your own experiences. And this is also coloured by our upbringing, our struggles, and our own internal dialogue. Thus, so is theirs. When someone criticizes you or speaks harshly, it feels personal. But in reality, that negativity stems from their own story, their own pain, their own perspective. And when we start to realize that nothing others say or do is truly about us, it gives us a sense of freedom. You no longer need to carry the weight of their judgments or opinions. And the same goes for positive feedback too, compliments and praise. That's also about how someone perceives you from their own point of view. When you detach yourself from both criticism and flattery, you begin to find an unshakable inner peace. A peace that isn't tied to external validation. So let's just look at why do we take things personally, to really start to understand this concept, because it's in the understanding that we can start to make the changes, the shifts that we need. So before we talk about how to stop taking things personally, we need to have understanding in place. Why is it so easy to get caught up in someone else's words and actions? The first one is ego and identity. Our egos are incredibly sensitive. We have a strong desire to be seen, accepted, and validated by others. We're pack animals after all. When someone says something negative, it threatens our sense of self. We take it personally because we've been conditioned to seek approval from outside sources. We often base our self-worth on how others perceive us. This is a learnt behaviour, usually entrenched in our childhood, which leaves us vulnerable to being hurt by others' opinions. The second is deep-seated beliefs. Often when somebody says something hurtful, it hits a nerve because it taps into a belief we already hold about ourselves. For example, if someone says you're not good enough, and deep down you already struggle with feelings of inadequacy, it hurts deeply because we already believe that about ourselves. They are validating a negative belief we already hold. And that comment stings even more because it mirrors our own internal fears. Taking things personally is often a reflection of our own resolved issues and insecurities. The third is social conditioning. From a young age, we are taught to seek approval. We are praised for good behaviour and criticised for bad. This trains us to place a great deal of importance on what others think of us. Breaking away from that conditioning takes time. It takes copious amounts of practice. But it is essential for us to achieve that level of emotional freedom. Now, with that said, hopefully you have a base, albeit a very small base, understanding of why we take things personally. So let's talk about how we can begin to break those cycles. How do we apply this agreement in a world where criticism and judgment are almost unavoidable? Remember, it's not about you. This is the essence of the agreement. Whether someone is praising you or criticizing you, their words are a reflection of them, not you. Everyone is living in their own world, dealing with their own emotions and responding to their own internal experiences. When someone lashes out in anger or frustration, it's usually because they are projecting their own pain. For example, let's say you're at work and a colleague snaps at you for something minor. Rather than taking it personally and thinking, oh, I must have done something wrong, or they don't like me, try to pause, to take a breath, and to recognize that their reaction is about them. Maybe they're stressed, maybe they had a bad morning, or maybe they're dealing with something entirely unrelated to you. Practice self-awareness. When we take something personally, it's often because it's triggering a deeper insecurity or belief within us. The next time you feel hurt by someone's words, again, take a breath, take a pause, ask yourself, why does this bother me? In coaching, I'm always saying, ask the question why. When anything comes up, why? Question yourself, why does this bother me? Is it because I'm afraid it's true? Is it tapping into an old wound or fear? When you start to become aware of your own triggers, you can start to heal them. An example of this is someone says, you never do anything right. And then that statement makes you feel small. Take a moment to reflect on whether you believe that about yourself. Is there a part of you that already feels inadequate? Were you told something very similar that you believed when you were a child and you've never been able to shake it off? Doesn't matter what you do and how great you've become. Those words that you heard as a small child sit embedded within you. And so when you hear it again, it triggers, it sets it off, sets those emotions of inadequacy off within you. And if so, this is an opportunity to work on that belief, to start shifting it. That is why the question why is so important. We start chasing the trauma. Another aspect of this is you don't take praise personally either. This one might sound counterintuitive because we all love compliments, but when you don't take criticism personally, you also have to be careful not to attach too much importance to praise. When someone is saying something positive, it's also a reflection of their own perspective and beliefs. The danger here is that if we rely too much on praise for our self-worth, we become vulnerable to its opposite, criticism. By learning to detach from both, we can find a sense of inner security that doesn't rely on external validation. And this is really important. This is where self-care, self-love comes in. Rather than relying on a third person to tell us how we feel, that we're a nice person, that we look good, we rely on ourselves. We're able to give that nourishment to ourselves. It's a massive step and one that so many of us struggle with. Setting boundaries. Boundaries, and this one will come up every single time. Self-loving boundaries. They come up. They are the cornerstones of personal development, of soul sovereignty. Setting boundaries and communicating clearly. Sometimes not taking things personally is easier said than done, especially in close relationships where emotions do run high. In these situations, it's important to communicate openly and to set those boundaries. If someone repeatedly says hurtful things, you have every right to set a boundary and let them know their words are affecting you in a negative way. It's not about blame, it's about standing up for yourself and setting a boundary and saying, whoa, stop. That isn't mine, that doesn't belong to me, you don't have the right to say that to me. Not taking things personally doesn't mean allowing others to disrespect you. It simply means understanding that their behaviour is a reflection of them. This is where I learnt, because I hadn't had those boundaries in my younger life. I used to allow people to say whatever they wanted to say, and I would take it in, and I would either absorb it and believe it because of where my beliefs were at that time about myself, or I would reject it, but I wouldn't have set that boundary. And it was so empowering when I used to just start putting up a hand and going, that doesn't belong to me, sort yourself out. I cannot tell you the amount of weight, energetic weight, that was taken off of me when I started doing that. When I would just put my hand up in a stop sign and go, stop, that's not mine, that doesn't belong to me, that's unfair, or that's unkind. It's immensely empowering. I can't tell you how to respond. Those are ways that I dealt with it. You have to choose how you want to respond to that type of projection. And the benefits of living by this agreement is what we're going to take a look at now. What happens when we truly stop taking things personally? And we've just almost covered one: emotional freedom. This is one of the greatest gifts of not taking anything personally. You free yourself from the emotional roller coaster that comes with caring so much about what other people think. You're no longer swayed by other people's opinions. You're no longer swayed by their judgments, and as a result, you experience more peace and emotional stability. You have healthier relationships. When you stop taking things personally, you're able to approach relationships from a place of empathy rather than defensiveness. You're less likely to react emotionally to somebody else's poor behaviour, and more likely to see the situation from their perspective. That doesn't mean you compromise or you become a doormat, but you're able to go, okay, they've got a lot going on, they're lashing out, I'm putting my boundary up, I'm going to let them know that I'm not taking that, but also I'm still going to hold them with love, I'm still going to hold them with consideration, I'm going to see what's going on from their perspective as to why they did that, why they were in that moment emotionally inept and they projected. It's not personal. You become logical with it. And this creates space for deeper understanding, deeper connections. So an example of this, if a friend cancels plans at the last minute, instead of immediately assuming it's because they don't value your time, you might instead consider that they could be overwhelmed by something going on in their life. It takes the onus of, they don't want to spend time with me, to, oh shit, what's going on? I hope they're okay. It allows you to build a more respectful relationship. It strengthens your relationships. It gives you greater confidence. When you no longer rely on external validation for your sense of worth, you become more confident in who you are. You stop looking to others for approval. And you start trusting your own instincts and decisions. You start trusting your intuition. And it builds a solid foundation of self-respect and self-love, which helps you build even firmer boundaries. So it's that cyclical effect. It's stepping off of one cycle and stepping onto another that is going to support you, that is going to help you grow. And by doing that, you're allowing yourself to move through life with greater authenticity. So let's take a look at some real life scenarios applying this second agreement. Where can we practice not taking anything personally? Well, the first one would be social media criticism. So straight off the bat, we've all been on social media, we've all posted something, and we've all had some kind of person lurking in the background that then writes something in the comments that is or feels like it's intentional to trigger you. Whether it's that comment or whether it's an email of someone who disagrees with you, our tendency is to react, to defend. And I'm thinking, as I'm saying this, I'm thinking of a situation where I was coaching a lady, and she didn't want to be on social media because she didn't want to have to deal with the comments. And I can remember her saying to me, well, what do I do with negative comments? And I said, well, you just leave them there. It's absolutely fine. Everybody's entitled to their own opinions. And she said, yeah, but what if they're leaving negative feedback about what I did? And I said, well, that's absolutely fine as well, because it gives a balanced approach. Not everybody is going to like us. Not everybody is going to like the work that we do. Not everybody is going to... Not everybody... We have this, and it took me back, and me remembering that situation, it took me back to that having to be liked by everybody. We don't have to be liked by everybody. I know I'm from a generation where our parents did absolutely everything, and the upbringing that we were given was just so with it we fitted in. We fitted in, and we became a likable member of society. And that, to an extent, I can understand why that was done. That was so we could move through life unseen, unheard, unscathed. The problem with that is the first two means that we're not being authentic. We're not showing up as we were designed to show up in the world. We should be seen and we should be heard. And it's not a problem if people don't agree. We are all entitled to our own beliefs, and we all have the capacity to change that. If somebody comes up with a differing perspective, that when we feel into it, it resonates. We have that capacity, and we are allowed to change. And I've noticed this, especially in the last 5 years, especially on social media, is the agendas. They're trying to put everybody in boxes. You sit on the left, you sit on the right, you sit over here because you're part of this community. No, the community that we are is human. And in that humanity, we have a multitude of differences, and we're supposed to. That is why we have nationalities with different shaped eyes, different coloured skin, speak a different language, have different ideologies. It's not because one is better than the other and one is right and one is wrong. It is so that we have a multitude, a spectrum from which to learn and grow. Workplace feedback. Receiving workplace feedback can often feel personal, especially if it's not entirely positive. And I think we've all had this one at some point in our lives, and you do think, oh shit. But it's about taking that feedback and improving ourselves. It's not about you did this and you did that. Well, hopefully it's not if you've got a good line manager, but it's about being able to take that feedback and not take it personally, not allow it to trigger all these unhealed wounds within us, but to go, right, okay, I'm being given this feedback because they are here to help me be a better version of myself. It's not about you as a person, it's about the work that you're doing. Family dynamics. And family dynamics are always the hardest because they're the closest. And these do take a lot of practice and time. Please do not get frustrated when you've started to implement these changes and you're well into your year 5 and the same ish is still coming onto your radar and you're still having to deal with it and it still pinches a little bit, recognize the fact that now, 5 years in, it only pinches a little bit, whereas 5 years ago you would have gone off like a volcano. That is something to really take hold of. That is a very good visual so that you can see your progress, because family members often know how to push our buttons. When a relative makes a hurtful comment, it can feel deeply personal because they know which buttons to push. It's the recognizing that they're projecting their own ish onto you that can really help you, that can help you avoid falling into the trap of taking it personally from reacting like a volcano. Helps you to step away, to respond, to set boundaries. And what you will find, and I'm not going to lie to you, because 99.9% of families do have a level of dysfunction, that's why we do this work. When you set those boundaries, they will intentionally step over the line. They are pushing, they want those old dynamics because they feed off of those old dynamics because they are dealing with their own ish. It's their ish. It's not yours. They will be running similar, if not the same, internal negativity that you've been healing from, but they've not stepped onto that healing journey as of yet. And so they are feeling depleted, and so they need energy. And so if you start putting boundaries up, if you don't have that reaction when they say something, because you set a boundary, then they will try and push that boundary to get that reaction to feed and soothe the negativity that is within them. So, bringing this to a close, wrapping up today's episode, I want to encourage you to start paying attention to the moments when you feel hurt, offended, or defensive. Ask yourself, am I taking this personally? Can I step back and see that this is about the other person and not me? When we do this, when we have this awareness, it's the first steps towards that emotional freedom that we seek. The second agreement, don't take anything personally, is a powerful tool for living a more peaceful and empowered life. When you stop allowing others' opinions to dictate your emotions, you reclaim your power. You become the creator of your own emotional experience. So thank you for joining me on this journey today. Next week we'll dive into the third agreement, don't make assumptions. Another powerful practice that can transform the way you communicate and connect to others. Until then, be kind to yourselves and remember, you're not responsible for anyone else's thoughts or feelings. You are only responsible for your own. This is Spiritual Midwife signing off. Until next time, take care.